Yo, this is a motherfucker who needs no introduction. You are watching Breaking Records Radio.
All right, so you are now tuned in to Breaking Records Radio. My name is Alex Kuchma, and I have here with me an original founding member of the Outsidaz from his debut solo album. Yeah, from his debut solo album, Musical Meltdown in the mid-1990s, to multiple Outsidaz projects, working with cats like Rod Digger and the Fugees, to appearing on the 8 Mile soundtrack, and doing full-length albums with underground giant Mr. Green. I'm talking, of course, about Young Zee. Welcome to the show, man. What's good?
Good looking. What it look like?
Oh, man, I said this at the beginning of the call here, but I can't thank you enough for taking the time out to speak to me here today. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the talk.
Nah, good looking. You know what I mean? Anything to get my music out to any part of the world is a wonderful thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. We play a lot of Outsidaz material on the show. I'm a big fan of Outsidaz and a big fan of your career as a solo artist as well. So it's a blessing to be able to sit down and talk with you, and I hope to uncover some history here.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about any kind of new music that you have on the way, but first I'd like to kind of start the conversation with some history. The first release, Musical Meltdown, so it had a bit of kind of drama surrounding it, and ultimately it took fans some time in order to get the recorded material on their shelves. Originally it was supposed to be placed on Perspective Records, which was kind of more of a soul and R&B imprint, with artists like Sounds of Blackness and Mint Condition being pretty dominant acts on the label. But what happened with this release? As there was a few singles released prior that appeared to go through with no real problems, but of course, Musical Meltdown ended up having complications.
Well, Perspective Records was Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, and you know they really R&B, you know, they R&B artists themselves, and they, you know, basically had the R&B world locked down. They just wanted to try something new at Perspective Records, and actually the A&R that signed me to Perspective Records worked at Flavor Unit for Queen Latifah, and I had a meeting with them, and they wanted to give me contracts right then and there, but the A&R, his name is Kobe Brown, he was like, no, I'm going to Perspective Records next week, and if you wait till next week, I'm going to sign you over there. So I waited and, you know, went up there. They gave me the contract the same day too. And so, like, it was a new label. They was trying, you know, new hip hop. They had Pudgy the Fat Bastard, Arrogant, you know what I mean? So they, you know, they was trying something new. So when they released Pudgy the Fat Bastard album first, it didn't do good. So I think that's what put a bad taste in their mouth. And you know, stuff started slowing down. So, you know, me, I'm not sticking around. If it's not what it's cracked up to be, then just let me go. You know what I mean? So that's how I ended up, you know, getting off that label before it ultimately just caved in.
Gotcha. I always kind of figured that it had something to do with some of the publicity that happened for the record. Like, I know the Source review was fairly controversial because if you look at the other reviews that were published on Musical Meltdown upon its release, overall you end up seeing praise. Like, I think notably is the Rap Pages review from Warren Coolidge, who praised the skits, the features. He praised your originality on the mic, which I think is important, and closes the review by claiming that you're kind of rap's best new artist. Yet if you end up looking at the Source, they kind of end up seeming hell-bent on comparing you to other Jersey rappers and fail to recognize your originality, essentially claiming that you were like biting styles from MCs like Redman. But if you listen to the album now, it kind of seems hard to identify with anything written here in the Source. How do you think that this ended up affecting the album? Do you think it affected the album at all? And do you think it had anything to do with the shelving of it, or were you completely out of the picture on Perspective before that came out?
I don't actually remember what time frame that came out. I just remember, I think we was doing a video for Problems, and Pace and Digga came up to me. They was basically in tears, and then they showed me this magazine and our rating, and like, I wasn't into, you know, magazines and worrying about what other people say, but it really affected Pace and Digga. But it didn't affect me. Like, I always thought that I was, you know, a fresh MC because I tried hard. You know what I mean? It's about rhyming. It's about having exciting lyrics, up to date, current events. Like, it's one verse has to be like really all of that to me. So I knew where I was headed. I didn't really care about the rating that I got in the Source magazine. I don't think that affected the outcome of Perspective Records, because they was really big on me. But they had just poured so much money into Pudgy, and it didn't go good. So I think that was the whole reason that Perspective Records rap department shut down.
Yeah, the originality thing always ended up kind of seeming crazy to me, just because I think if anyone ends up listening to you, that's the first thing that they end up thinking, right? That's the first term that really comes to their head is just how original you are on the mic and this kind of wacky, kind of zany style, great punchlines, but so unique at the same time, right? You think of other kind of really unique rappers, I think people like ODB, for example. I feel like you end up kind of falling into that category of just really kind of left field, unique MCs that have a very distinct voice and a very distinct kind of delivery to bring to the mic. It felt like the Source review was almost out of touch with not only reality, but also the other publications that were coming out at the time and talking about the album. It almost seemed like they had something against you. It was like a personal kind of thing.
Yeah, I thought that too. With the I don't know, Benzino. He was basically making the decisions of the mic instead the mics that people get instead of like a group thing within the magazine. So I don't know. Maybe he had something against me or something. I don't know, because it was before the Eminem thing, right?
Yeah, it was well before that, right? So Musical Meltdown came out when 96, I want to say 95.
Yeah,
something like that. But before Eminem would have been on anybody's radar at the very least. There was an interview recently with Raw Digga, and she ended up speaking about the Outsidaz, and she said that Bizarre was actually kind of the first member, or the first Detroit homie, anyhow, that was kind of down with the crew. And I know people like Bugs, Proof, Bizarre, and as well, of course, Eminem had deep roots with the clique. But how did you end up originally meeting Bizarre if he was indeed that first one to kind of open the connection with Detroit?
Well, I met Bizarre. I was on tour with the Fugees, and I was the opening act for, the score. And at one of the Fugees shows, he came up to me at the end of the show and was, introduced himself. Him and M liked my style, and they wanted to, mess with me. So I told them after the tour was over, I would hook up with them, bring them out to Jersey, and, start working with them. So when the tour was over, I flew them out there. We started working, and, they just joined right in with our group that we already had going. We had the studio. We had everything going. And Bizarre, Bizarre is like my brother. And so
when you end up meeting him at the show, does he end up giving you a demo or anything? What music does he end up showing you?
They actually had like a Walkman or something like that and played it like a CD player and was playing it for me on the headphones.
Would that been like the Underground EP that D12 put out around that period of time? 90, 95, 96?
Well, it was only a couple songs. I didn't have a whole bunch of time. So one of them was Bizarre and M, and one of them was like a group of people.
What was your first reaction to hearing some of that music? Because Bizarre's style is also just like completely fucking insane. And I know he kind of evolved into that a little bit later on, but even going back to some of those early kind of recordings from D12, Bizarre's style is definitely out there.
Yeah, I always thought Bizarre had like a kind of style. You can say whatever you want, do whatever you want type of thing. And it was different than mine. So anybody who had styles like different than mine, I kind of like, and I still liked it. I kind of was drawn to that because, I felt like a style like Bizarre on songs with us would be really dope.
What were the reactions of the other members of the Outsidaz at that period of time? Because the Outsidaz was a fairly large clique. Of course, you had you and Pace, but you had other cats like Raw Digga and whatnot as well. What were their reactions to a lot of this music that you were showing them?
Well, a lot of Bizarre and M's music?
Yeah.
I mean, they thought it was dope. They thought, they liked Bizarre personally, and they thought that, a white boy added to our clique could only be, you know, doper. MTV was big at the time. And so, you know, we just felt like it would be a beautiful add-on to what we already had going. So we started doing songs like Makosa. We did dozens of songs. And then, you know, we got the deal and we just continued to do more songs.
As a member of the Outsidaz, you ended up releasing a couple kind of phenomenal projects in the early 2000s. Nightlife, which kind of exists as an EP, as well as The Bricks in 2001. What happened here ultimately? Like, why did the Outsidaz end up stop recording group material post 2001? You had the push from various Eminem tours. You had the 8 Mile soundtrack, which came out a little bit after. Why not follow up the hype and record something new with the Outsidaz afterwards?
Well, you know, the Outsidaz, you know, it's a lot of people, a lot of different personalities, and like it is with every group. And, you know, I feel like the reason that we had stopped, you know, the label had stopped messing with us because we was on a House of Blues tour, and, you know, in the U.S. of all the House of Blueses, and, you know, Outsidaz, you know, bringing a lot of girls backstage, doing this and that. So they actually told us we can't bring any more girls backstage. And then the show, I think it was in Chicago, after the show was over, you know, I'm chilling upstairs with DU, and people came upstairs like the Outsidaz was fighting downstairs. So I ran downstairs, and the Outsidaz was fighting with security, like literally fighting because they wanted to bring girls upstairs after they had already told us we couldn't. And so the very next show was in LA where a record label was. And so they had everybody prepared to come to the show, and they would not let us in the building. So that made the labels slow down on messing with us. And that's what everything slowed down right there.
But within the crew, you guys were all still tight, right? Like, I know you and Pace have had a strong relationship over the years. Nothing happened within the group kind of dynamic then. It was label interest mostly?
Yeah, nothing happened with the group. We all still, you know, did music together separately because we actually, the Outsidaz was a bunch of people that was in groups. Like, I was a solo artist. You know, Pace had his group. DU had his group. Digga had her group. And we just all came together as the Outsidaz, but we still had our different groups. So I think that's around the time where everybody started focusing on their own group.
Yeah, I never really thought about the Outsidaz as that before. I always kind of figured them as more of an organic hip-hop group, but as you're describing it, it more seems like a super group kind of, I don't know, top-tier MCs from different collectives all kind of coming together for one. Is that how you always kind of saw the Outsidaz?
Well, I mean, that's how we actually were. That's how we met. You know, I met Pace and DU at a New Year's party, and in the party, I didn't really know nobody. Huh?
And DU was already part of another group, right? At that period?
Yeah, and so was Pace. Pace had this group called The Real Characters, and DU had this group called The Teammates. And so, you know, I met them at this party. I'm there with these girls, and they just chilling there, too. Started talking about music. We went outside and started rapping, and ended up me, Pace, and DU was the best one. So we started, you know, hanging out, doing music together. And then, you know, we ultimately came up with the name, like, we should all be one group. All the groups combined should be one group. And that's where we came up with the Outsidaz at.
Man, it was beautiful chemistry overall.
Was a big influence.
Right now she on an elevator. I'm not trying to waste your time or give you all of mine. I just wanna vibe with you.
Yeah, beautiful chemistry overall, and I love the material that the group ended up putting out. And independently as solo artists, you guys all end up holding your own weight as well. I wanted to ask about the 8 Mile soundtrack, as you have a solo song on there, squished between two kind of giants with Rakim and Gangstar. I know your connection with M, but how did this song ended up coming together, and was it recorded for the 8 Mile soundtrack, or was it taken off of another project?
Well, sometime what happened on that one is, I used to give M like just CDs and for them to play when they go do their little shows on tour that I didn't go, because you know when you on tour you got the same movies, same music you playing over and over again when you on the tour bus. So, and then you know, one day I had went to the studio with Digga, which is in New York, to record for the Flip Mode, and I usually don't go with her. You know what I mean? I let her just go do her own thing. Sometimes I'll pop in if I'm in New York already. But this one particular day, it was like 2 a.m, and she asked me to go to the studio with her. So I'm asleep all the way there. When we get there, she goes upstairs. I stay in the car asleep. So after a while, I got out, smoked a cigarette, and I seen Eminem's bodyguards in the car behind us. So, you know, we had just came off tour not too long ago. So there was like he upstairs. So I went upstairs, said what up to Busta and all them. Then I went to start fucking with Eminem. And, you know, we was chilling, rapping, and bugging out and stuff like that. And so after a while, I'm like, what y'all doing in here? And it was like 50 is doing his song for the 8 Mile soundtrack. So I was like, you should let me get on this soundtrack. And, you know, Paul Rosenberg and all the execs at Shady was like, no, this the last song. Zee, this the last song. So I was like, bro, I'm not even talking to y'all. Like, this is your shit. All these people work for you. If you want me on it, then I'm going to be on it. So next day I got a call. It was Eminem. He was like, you right. You know what I mean? I do want you on it, and this is my shit. So he set up a studio time for me to go to in New York, and he was like, the song that was on that CD that you let me listen to, it's called That's My Nigga For Real. I want you to do that over, but I had did that song with 2 other artists from the Outsidaz. So it was DU and Nauseous, and he was like, take them off and just do the solo song. So I went to the studio, wrote 2 more verses for it, and that's how I got on 8 Mile soundtrack.
Wow. I love that story, and it's so interesting that Eminem is obviously recording at that period of time for the 8 Mile soundtrack. You mentioned that 50 Cent was in the studio recording for the album, but also that Flip Mode and Busta were there as well, and of course you ended up going there with Rod Digga. It's just interesting because I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably know the soundtrack more than I do at this point, but I don't think Busta or Flip Mode were on that soundtrack at all, were they?
No, they weren't. They were just in the same studio. You know, the studios have different rooms, so they was in a whole different room. And yeah, no, they weren't in the same room. It's like Studio A, Studio B, Studio C, like that.
Fair enough. There's a line at the end of the song that you're on again for the 8 Mile soundtrack, the closing line actually, where you end up saying, quote, "This label deal is for Raz, Pace, and Chill. I know mad heads, but still." That line always kind of was a little bit elusive to me, and I didn't quite understand it. Can you detail what exactly you ended up meaning here and what deal you were referring to?
Well, the label deal was for it was supposed to be for me, the Outsidaz, and Pace. That I was going to do another label. I was going to do a label deal with Chris Schwartz, and yeah, that's what I was talking about. And Rosalind is Redman's sister. She's like one of my best friends, and you know Pace, always he's like my brother. So you know I just had to throw him a shout out in there.
Okay, who was Chill again?
Chill is he was part of my management team's he was like they Haitian. He was just part of my management team. And you know, that was my boy. He's still my boy, but you know. One of the people I hung with all the time. Roz, Pace, and Chill, my everyday crew.
Fair enough. We sort of ended up getting an Outsidaz reunion on that JMT project a couple years back for Design and Malice with yourself and Pace anyhow. When you ended up doing that track, did Vinny let you know that he wanted both of you guys on the same cut, like that he wanted that Outsidaz reunion? How did that come together?
Me and Vinny just chopped it up, and you know, he said he wanted me on an album, so he sent me the beat. I did the verse, and when the song was done, Pace was on the hook, and I was like, perfect. Then we hooked up in Philly. We did the video. We had mad fun. Vinny Paz is my guy. You know what I mean? So we had mad fun. That was definitely a fun day in hip hop for me.
Man, it was such a good look because everyone was excited for a new Jedi Mind Tricks album. Like, we hadn't really had one. I think it was Servants in Heaven, Kings in Hell was the last one prior to that. And then there was all that commotion, and then Stoop ended up leaving the group, and there was the beef in between, like, Vinnie Paz and Just Allah. And just knowing that we were going to end up getting another full-length Jedi Mind Tricks album was really exciting. And then when the singles started dropping, and then we had two different reunions. We had an Outsidaz reunion and a Jedi Mind Tricks reunion. It felt really good anyhow, and I think fans really ended up appreciating it, and you ended up doing a phenomenal job on your verse there, so thank you for what you ended up delivering on that project.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. If I don't have a mag, I get a bastard stab with a knife big as a claw and the last and crap.
Oh, it's amazing. I wanted to shift to talk about some of the new music that you have coming out. What are you currently kind of cooking up?
Well, I got 2 EPs and an album coming out. I got an EP with this artist named Tayamo Dinku. Y'all can look him up on Instagram. T-A-I Yamo Dinku, D-E-N-K-U. And our project is almost finished. We shot a video already. So, you know, we working that out, and then I got a project with this producer named Shaughnessy. You can check him out. It's just like it's spelled, Shawneci on Instagram. And I got a album deal with Damali Urbana. That's DAMALIURBANA. You can check them out on Instagram too.
So those EPs that are coming out, are they on this label, or is that going to be for like a solo project that you have coming out as well?
Well, they just really, you know, projects I'm doing with a fresh MC and a producer. So, you know, it's just to like, you know, I want to flood, when I start releasing music, I want to flood it. So then my album should be coming sometime after that.
That's amazing. You haven't recorded, well, I guess you've steadily been recording because we see you on some features here and there, but ultimately we haven't really got a new Young Zee project since I think it was Mr. Green, right? The One Crazy Weekend. Why dive back into music so heavily now and start really dropping full-length projects? What's changed?
Well, you know, I did some years in jail, but for guns, and I just came home 3 months ago.
I heard about that, but I didn't think it was that long.
Yeah, it was 4 years.
Wow, okay, well, congratulations. I'm glad you're out now.
Yeah, you know, shit happens. You gotta leave them guns alone. Leave the guns alone, no matter who you are, how much money you have, the best lawyers, and you're still going to jail.
Fair enough.
Leave the guns alone.
So these projects, the 2 EPs and the album that you're going to be following up with, are you planning on releasing these throughout this year, 2021?
Oh yeah, of course. They about to start releasing like next month.
That's amazing. I'm really looking forward to any kind of new Young Zee material. And I haven't heard of the other people. You mentioned Shaughnessy there. I haven't heard of him or her. And then the Dinku person also I never heard of before. So I'm curious to see their skill set as well, and hopefully end up finding a new artist that I can fuck with.
Yeah, definitely. Tayamo is a dope MC. He's white. You know what I mean? And you know, we just be killing shit. And when we prepare our first single, I'm gonna definitely send it to you, and you know what I mean? We gotta stay in touch, and I'll keep you abreast of everything I'm doing. We can have more interviews. I'll bring outsiders. You know, we can make this a regular thing out in Canada.
Man, that's so exciting. I would love to be able to interview you and, yeah, as you mentioned, other members of the Outsidaz, just as new material is surfacing and coming out, and as we're able to kind of soak it up and absorb it a little bit more. In terms of these releases that are planned, are you just releasing these digitally only, or are they going to come with CDs, vinyl, cassettes? Are you doing physical runs for these as well?
Well, we're not sure about that right now. We may just release the joints on a website, you know, and then take it to streams. We may just, go that route instead of just going straight to, streams, because, with these COVID times, you got to do what you got to do to continue to make the money you was making before this. And so I think the records are really good and good enough to, get a whole movement going on the website. So that's what I'm working on now, is this website. And I think that's what we're going to release it on.
Gotcha. I'm a big fan of physical media myself, and I always end up vouching for a physical format of some kind, let it be CD, vinyl, or tape. But at the same time, I understand the kind of the lower profits, anyways, as of recent, and the risk that's involved financially in terms of pressing up any sort of physical copies, and you risk them just not selling and just not doing very well, and people don't really buy that material much anymore. But I think it's generally worth the effort in order to get some physical copies in the hands of listeners. But with COVID coming around, it's complicated things even further, because pressing plants are held up, and it's made the whole process very sluggish and difficult for the artists. So it's hard times that we live in for so many kind of weird and it's just odd reasons, right? You don't really think of these things when you think of a pandemic. You think of the health implications. You think of the economy in general being shut down, but you don't think of these little problems that occur because of everything just being halted.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but me too. I definitely like physical, like CDs and stuff like that, instead of just streaming everything.
Yeah, I always say that it adds longevity to a release. Like, so often, like, for example, if I'm going for a drive with my fiance or whatever, we'll end up picking up a CD from the shelf, and I'll go through the shelves, and oh shit, I haven't heard this in 10 years, I haven't heard this in 15 years, let's pull it out and let's play it. That happens so regularly. But what I'll never do is I never end up going through my hard drive and say, oh shit, I downloaded this 10 years ago, let's play this, I haven't heard this in a while. That never happens. But if I have something physical, it allows me to reintroduce myself to it time and time again as time goes on. It never really allows it to escape from complete memory. I think it adds longevity to a release having something physical. I've said this a lot, but I do stand by those beliefs pretty firmly.
Nah, that's true. What you said is exactly true. I could be going through some of my old tapes and whatever and play something, be like, oh, I remember this, and then play it. But I never go through my hard drives either.
Yeah, I think that's fairly regular, but at the same time, people don't really they don't experience music in the same way that they used to, at the very least, right? And people have dramatically shifted their experiences with music and went towards the streaming route. So I understand like I said, the risk financially in terms of pressing anything, but I think there is still that kind of diehard hip hop community that is still buying physical media, and I think that longevity aspect, at least for those listeners, is one to definitely consider when you're tackling that question.
Yeah, no, I definitely think if you press up 10,000 copies of a good body of music, you can sell all of them. You could, give some away as promos, of course, but you could sell the majority of them, like 97% of them. You could do that. Especially
if you're touring off of it for a couple years, right?
Yeah, and you got your good social media platforms going, I really think you could do that. I'm into setting up booths at shows.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, people like to have memorabilia of the show that they've been to and the music. People like that stuff.
Yeah. And if you care about the packaging and you don't kind of slack off on that, and you make it feel like the physical is actually something that's worthy of buying, and not just a CDR pressed with a blank little insert or whatever, I think it adds value to the release. It makes it appealing for people to buy, and as you said, if you hustle it, you can get rid of those 10,000 copies, or even smaller presses like 500, 1,000. Maybe 10,000 would be hard to get rid of nowadays, but it's probably possible, especially if you're touring.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, social media wise? What's your social media presence like? Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, that kind of thing.
Well, I have a friend that runs my Twitter and a friend that runs my Facebook, but I don't never be on those. I only be on Instagram. I'm on Instagram every day. I had an old account. I don't have it no more. My new account is Young Zee Bars. That's, just like I said, Young Zee Bars. At me, follow me. I follow back. Let's, I got some Outsider hoodies on my Instagram that's available for people to to buy. And y'all can hit up my Instagram, DM me if you want to get a hoodie. They're $50. They glow in a black light and everything. So they're really good hoodies. So hit me up on Instagram, Young Zee Bars, and let's start some type of conversation.
And the new music that's coming out, I imagine fans will be able to be alerted to that new music through Instagram as well.
Yep, you can. I'm always posting raps and just doing my hip hop thing. Instagram is my daily, release to the world of how I'm feeling that day, what's going on, what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm really active on Instagram.
Perfect. All right. Again, man, Young Zee, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out to speak to me here today. I appreciate it. And I really learned a lot from this conversation. I value the conversation, and I'd love to be able to stay in touch down the road whenever you do have new music coming out. Interview yourself, anybody else that you're working with. I'd love to be tuned into them as well. I'm looking forward to all the new material that you have coming out in 2021. And again, for those listening at home, Young Zee Bars, you follow him on Instagram. And yeah, check out the new music. Check out the old music as well if you haven't already listened to the Outsidaz catalog. It's dense at this point between the solo artist and the group material, but it's all dope. Check out Young Zee's project with Mr. Green, One Crazy Weekend, that dropped maybe about 10 years ago or
and
so. It's fantastic as well.
Also, I have SoundCloud. You can check out my SoundCloud, Young Zee Music.
Young Zee Music on SoundCloud. Perfect. All right, Young Zee, man, I can't thank you enough. I'll end up letting you go here, but once again, thank you.